Chapter 6. The Gorilla Face. "Something has happened to Helen!" Aunt Rosemary cried out fearfully. Nancy was already racing through the second-floor hallway. Reaching the stairs, she leaped down them 2 steps at a time. Helen Corning had collapsed in a wing chair in the parlor, her hands over her face. "Helen, what happened?" Nancy asked, reaching her friend's side. "Out there, looking in that window." Helen pointed to the front window of the parlor next to the hall. "The most horrible face I ever saw." "Was it a man's face?" Nancy questioned. "Oh, I don't know. It looked just like a gorilla." Helen closed her eyes as if to shut out the memory of the sight. Nancy did not wait to hear any more. In another second, she was at the front door and had yanked it open. Stepping outside, she looked all around. She could see no animal near the house, nor any sign under the window that one had stood there. Puzzled, the young sleuth hurried down the steps and began a search of the grounds. By this time, Helen had collected her wits and come outside. She joined Nancy, and together they looked in every outbuilding and behind every clump of bushes on the grounds of Twin Elms. They did not find one footprint or any other evidence to prove that a gorilla or other creature had been on the grounds of the estate. "I saw it! I know I saw it!" Helen insisted. "I don't doubt you," Nancy replied. "Then what explanation is there?" Helen demanded. "You know I never did believe in spooks. But if we have many more of these weird happenings around here, I declare I'm going to start believing in ghosts." Nancy laughed. "Don't worry, Helen," she said. "There will be a logical explanation for the face at the window." The girls walked back to the front door of the mansion. Miss Flora and Aunt Rosemary stood there and immediately insisted upon knowing what had happened. As Helen told them, Nancy once more surveyed the outside of the window at which Helen had seen the terrifying face. "I have a theory," she spoke up. "Our ghost simply leaned across the side of the porch and held a mask in front of the window." Nancy stretched her arm out to demonstrate how this was possible. "So that's why he didn't leave any footprints under the window," Helen said. "But he certainly got away from here fast." She suddenly laughed. "He must be on some ghost track team." Her humor, Nancy was glad to see, relieved the tense situation. She had noticed Miss Flora leaning wearily on her daughter's arm. "You'd better lie down and rest, Mother," Mrs. Hayes advised. "I guess I will," Aunt Flora agreed. It was suggested that the elderly woman use Aunt Rosemary's room while the others continued the experiment with the chandelier. Helen and Aunt Rosemary went into the parlor and waited as Nancy ascended the front stairway and went to Miss Flora's bedroom. Once more she began to rock from side to side. Downstairs, Aunt Rosemary and her niece were gazing intently at the ceiling. "Look!" Helen exclaimed, pointing to the crystal chandelier. "It's moving!" In a moment it swung to the left, then back to the right. "Nancy has proved that the ghost was up in my mother's room," Aunt Rosemary said excitedly. After a few minutes, the rocking motion of the chandelier slackened and finally stopped. Nancy came hurrying down the steps. "Did it work?" she called. "Yes, it did," Aunt Rosemary replied. "Oh, Nancy, we must have 2 ghosts." "Why do you say that?" Helen asked. "One rocking the chandelier, the other holding the horrible face up to the window. No one could have gone from Miss Flora's room to the front porch in such a short time. Oh, this complicates everything." "It certainly does," Nancy agreed. "The question is, are the 2 ghosts in cahoots? Or it's just possible there is only one. He could have disappeared from Miss Flora's room without our seeing him, and somehow hurried to the first floor and let himself out the front door while we were upstairs. I'm convinced there is at least one secret entrance into this house, and maybe more. I think our next step should be to try to find it, or them. We'd better wash the luncheon dishes first, Aunt Rosemary suggested. As she and the girls worked, they discussed the mystery, and Mrs. Hayes revealed that she had talked to her mother about leaving the house, whether or not she sold it. I thought we might at least go away for a little vacation, but Mother refuses to leave. She says she intends to remain right here until this ghost business is settled. Helen smiled. Nancy, my great-grandmother, is a wonderful woman. She has taught me a lot about courage and perseverance. I hope if I ever reach her age, I'll have half as much. Yes, she's an example to all of us, Aunt Rosemary concurred. Nancy nodded. I agree. I haven't known your mother long, Aunt Rosemary, but I think she is one of the dearest persons I've ever met. If Miss Flora won't leave, said Helen, I guess that means we all stay. That's settled, said Nancy with a smile. After the dishes were put away, the girls were ready to begin their search for a secret entrance into the mansion. Let's start with Miss Flora's room, Helen suggested. That's a logical place, Nancy replied, and took the lead up the stairway. Every inch of the wall, which was paneled in maple halfway to the ceiling, was tapped. No hollow sound came from any section of it to indicate an open space behind. The bureau, dressing table, and bed were pulled away from the walls, and Nancy carefully inspected every inch of the paneling for cracks or wide seams to indicate a concealed door. Nothing yet, she announced, and then decided to inspect the sides of the fireplace. The paneled sides and brick front revealed nothing. Next, Nancy looked at the sides and rear of the stone interior. She could see nothing unusual, and the blackened stones did not look as if they had ever been disturbed. She closed the damper, which Helen had left open, and then suggested that the searchers transfer to another room on the second floor. But no trace of any secret entrance to the mansion could be found. I think we've had enough investigation for one day, Aunt Rosemary remarked. Nancy was about to say that she was not tired and would like to continue, but she realized that Mrs. Hayes had made this suggestion because her mother was once more showing signs of fatigue and strain. Helen, who also realized the situation, said, Let's have an early supper. I'm starved. I am too, Nancy replied, laughing gaily. The mood was contagious, and soon Miss Flora seemed to have forgotten about her mansion being haunted. She sat in the kitchen while Aunt Rosemary and the girls cooked the meal. Steak and French fried potatoes, fresh peas, and yummy floating island for dessert, said Helen. I can hardly wait. Fruit cup first, Aunt Rosemary announced, taking a bowl of fruit from the refrigerator. Soon the group was seated at the table. Tactfully steering the conversation away from the mystery, Nancy asked Miss Flora to tell the group about parties and dances which had been held in the mansion long ago. The elderly woman smiled in recollection. I remember one story my husband told me of something that happened when he was a little boy, Miss Flora began. His parents were holding a masquerade, and he was supposed to be in bed fast asleep. His nurse had gone downstairs to talk to some of the servants. The music awakened my husband, and he decided it would be great fun to join the guests. I'll put on a costume myself, he said to himself. He knew there were some packed in a trunk in the attic. Miss Flora paused. By the way, girls, I think that sometime while you are here, you ought to see them. They're beautiful. Well, Everett went to the attic, opened the trunk, and searched until he found a soldier's outfit. It was very fancy, red coat and white trousers. He had quite a struggle getting it on and had to turn the coat sleeves way up. The knee breeches came to his ankles, and the hat was so large it came down over his ears. By this time, Miss Flora's audience was laughing, and Aunt Rosemary remarked, "My father really must have looked funny. Please go on, Mother." Little Everett came down the stairs and mingled with the masqueraders at the dance. For a while he wasn't noticed. Then suddenly his mother discovered the queer-looking figure. And Aunt Rosemary interrupted. "Quickly put him back to bed, I'm sure." Miss Flora laughed. "That's where you're wrong. The guests thought the whole thing was such fun that they insisted Everett stay. Some of the women danced with him. He went to dancing school and was an excellent dancer. Then they gave him strawberries and cream and cake." Helen remarked, "And then put him to bed." Again Miss Flora laughed. The poor little fellow never knew that he had fallen asleep while he was eating, and his father had to carry him upstairs. He was put into his little four-poster, costume and all. Of course, his nurse was horrified, and I'm afraid that during the rest of the night the poor woman thought she would lose her position. But she didn't. In fact, she stayed with the family until all the children were grown up. "Oh, that's a wonderful story," said Nancy. She was about to urge Miss Flora to tell another story when the telephone rang. Aunt Rosemary answered it and then called to Nancy. "It's for you." Nancy hurried to the hall, grabbed up the phone, and said, "Hello?" A moment later she cried out, "Dad! How wonderful to hear from you!" Mr. Drew said that he had not found Willie Wharton, and certain clues seemed to indicate that he was not in Chicago, but in some other city. "I have a few other matters to take care of that will keep me here until tomorrow night. How are you getting along?" "I haven't solved the mystery yet," his daughter reported. "We've had some more strange happenings. I'll certainly be glad to see you here at Cliffwood. I know you can help me." "All right, I'll come. But don't try to meet me. The time is too uncertain, and as a matter of fact, I may find that I'll have to stay here in Chicago." Mr. Drew said he would come out to the mansion by taxi. Briefly, Nancy related her experiences at Twin Elms, and after a little more conversation, hung up. When she rejoined the others at the table, she told them about Mr. Drew's promised visit. "Oh, I'll be so happy to meet your father," said Miss Flora. "We may need legal advice in this mystery." There was a pause after this remark, with everyone silent for a few moments. Suddenly, each one in the group looked at the others, startled. From somewhere upstairs came the plaintive strains of violin music. Had the radio been turned on again by the ghost? Nancy dashed from the table to find out. End of Chapter 6.